Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today I'm gonna be starting a reading vlog for Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And you know, it's a little bit late at night right now. It's like 11:45 at night, so I'm not planning on reading a whole lot of this right now tonight, but I want to get a little taste. I want to get like 50 pages in maybe and just feel the vibe of this book. And I just thought tonight would be the perfect night to start this because it's just been calling my name on my bookshelves, and tonight it's pouring rain in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that out my window, but it's wonderful, and it's like so atmospheric and setting the tone, I think, for reading something scary. I'm just so excited to get to this. Like, I really want to read this book so badly, and I'm excited to read this one because I know that this is one of Stephen King's most classic books because it's one of the first books that he ever published. I don't really know a whole lot about this book, to be honest. I think it just says it's about this guy who goes back to his town, Jerusalem's Lot, and I think the people in the town are like vampires now, or they're like turning into vampires, or I don't know. It has something to do with vampires. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I'm excited. And this book is also quite a thicker one. It is just about 650 pages. So this is definitely one of Stephen King's thicker books, but oh my gosh, I'm so excited to read this right now. And I think I have decided that I want to include spoilers in this vlog just because I decided to do that when I read The Long Walk in February, and I had a really great time doing that. So if you haven't read this book, then continue at your own risk of being spoiled. Somebody made a really great point because, like, in that last vlog I was asking, like, do you guys prefer spoiler reading vlogs or non-spoiler reading vlogs? And somebody was saying, like, they made a really great point that they were like, I like to see your live reactions to things and being able to spoil things, and if they want just like my general thoughts about the book, then that's what like my wrap-ups are for. And I was like, that's actually a really great point, because if there's any opportunity to get into spoilers and actually talk about a book, it's in these reading vlogs, right? I'm gonna start reading this book now. The next morning, and last night I did get exactly 50 pages into Salem's Lot, and so I don't really have many opinions on this book yet. I mean, I'm only 50 pages in. I don't know too much about what's going on. I just know that we're following this guy Ben, who is this like writer who's published these books, and he meets this girl Susie who's like this really big fan of his. It's actually like 1:20 in the afternoon now, and I wanted to start reading earlier today, but then I woke up kind of late and then I needed to go grocery shopping, so I went to this new place called Hagen's that I've never been grocery shopping there before. So I was kind of like overwhelmed because there was so much to look at and so much to see, and it was like one of the biggest grocery stores I've ever been in. So I spent like a little bit longer in there than I was expecting to. And I also got vanilla covered pretzels. These are like my favorite snack, like my go-to. And yeah, anyways, I'm just gonna light a candle, start reading this book, and curl up by the window because it's all stormy and cloudy and rainy out today, which is just like the perfect reading weather. Maybe like in about an hour or two I'll make some coffee, and I just want to dedicate this entire day to reading this book. I just want to read this book all day. It's gonna be lit. Page 62, so I haven't read a whole lot, but this book is reminding me so much of The Haunting of Hill House. And I haven't actually read the book The Haunting of Hill House, but I've seen the show. It's like one of my favorite shows ever. I was just curious, like I just looked it up to see what got published first, because this is like really reminding me of like The Haunting of Hill House. Like it has such a similar vibe. And apparently The Haunting of Hill House came out in 1959, so that book definitely got published first, because I believe this one came out in like 1970. Yeah, this one was originally published in 1975. And I think I should have realized just by looking at this cover that this book is mainly going to involve this like weird haunted spooky house, but for some reason I didn't think that that was going to be a part of the story, because like I really have no idea what Salem's Lot is even about. Like as I said, it's just, I just thought it was like about vampires or something. Like I don't really know. It's kind of about this like weird haunted house and how there's this like glow around it, and like how like Ben, our main character, just told this story of like when he was a kid and he like snuck into the house on a dare, and then he like saw this guy hanging in, you know, like saw this thing that he thought might have been a ghost or something, and he was like so scared. And now they're saying that I think somebody just recently bought the house, so I think our main character Ben is like writing a book about the house, or about Salem's Lot in general. So that also kind of makes me feel like it's inspired by The Haunting of Hill House, because like the oldest brother in The Haunting of Hill House is like writing a story about Hill House, you know? So it's definitely reminding me of that, but I kind of love it for that reason, because I love The Haunting of Hill House. Like it's one of my favorite TV shows. After this, like I'm definitely interested in reading The Haunting of Hill House book, even though I've heard that it's very different from the adaptation. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna continue reading now. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon now, and I am now 152 pages into this book. I had to set an alarm on my phone to read for an hour straight, because in that first hour of reading I kept getting so distracted by my phone, and I was so irritated with myself. I would read like 2 pages and then like check my phone because a notification would pop up, and I was just getting really irritated. So I set the little stopwatch for an hour on my phone and just set it next to me so that I wouldn't constantly be checking the screen. And it helped because I was able to read a lot in that hour, and so I'm glad I'm like not being distracted by my phone anymore. I feel like this book is okay so far, but it's definitely like setting the mood for this very like creepy atmosphere. I will say I think this is like the 3rd Stephen King book that I've read that follows a character who's a writer. Like one of the main characters is a writer. Because this book follows Ben, who's like a writer, and he's published like 3 books. And I feel like in the book It, the main character Bill is a writer in that book, and he's published books. And then obviously Misery follows a writer, so I think Stephen King definitely likes writing about writers, you know, which makes sense. He probably sees himself in a lot of his main characters, which is understandable, I guess. And also, like, I don't know if it's a weird coincidence or not, but I've noticed that a lot of these characters have similar names to characters in It and like some of his other books. Like there's already been, like, our main character's name is Ben, which is a character from It, and then there's also a kid named Richie in this book, which is another kid from It, and then there's a character named Danny in this book that's like one of the more main characters, and it's like Danny Torrance from The Shining, you know? So like I know this book was published before those other books, but like I just don't know if that's like a weird coincidence or what. He just recycles names that he likes, I guess. But yeah, so far this is really interesting. I feel like the slowest part of the book for me was the chapter, the 3rd chapter, that was just called Salem's Lot, and it was kind of like introducing you to every character basically that lives in Salem's Lot and kind of giving you like a brief summary about like what they do and who they are. But things definitely started to pick up in chapter 4, which started on page 125, and then this is when it starts to talk about Danny Glick and the others. And Danny and his brother like went into the woods, and then they saw this like monster or this like creature or this man. Like they don't know what it was, but they were both kind of like scared. And then the chapter right before that was that guy. It didn't even say who it was, but it was like he was bringing him a body and he's like, I've sacrificed. And so it says the guy was like carrying a child in his arms and he said, I bring you this. And it's like, I don't know if this is some like kind of like devil worshipping thing, because they said there were like Satan worshippers in the town and stuff. So I'm really curious to see what happened to these boys, because I think Danny came out of the woods and he said that his brother Ralphie got taken by something, but he doesn't really remember. And so I think obviously this thing just like sacrificed the brother Ralphie to like whatever, right? I know that this book is about vampires, and that might be kind of like a spoilery thing to know, because I'm like 150 something pages in and there's been zero mention of vampires so far. So I feel like that's kind of a spoiler that I knew that it was about that maybe. But I really enjoyed that scene, and then I really enjoyed how it's kind of like creepy that these two guys are wanting to move into this house that the town considers this house to be haunted. These guys just like requested this weird delivery service from these guys, and so these mover dudes had to go and like drop off all these boxes like in the house and like in the basement of the house. And like while they were in the house in the basement, they thought they heard like something moving around, and they both got so scared and they like ran out of the house, like bolted. I don't know, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, it's really interesting. I love the vibes of this like haunted house place, and I'm really curious to know more about the two guys that are living there and why they want to live there. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really enjoying it so far. And so I think I'm gonna move over to reading on the couch over here. So I think I'm gonna set another alarm on my phone to read for another hour straight, and then by that time it'll be like 5 something, and I'll see if I'm hungry to make dinner. But if not, I'm just gonna continue reading because I'm really enjoying this. I did read for another hour, and I just stopped at page 217, and that very last scene that I just read was really creepy because they were burying the boy. The little boy Ralphie disappeared, but then his older brother Danny was like in the hospital, and now Danny like died randomly. I don't know if they know how he died, but he's dead. And so they were having like a funeral for him, and then this guy that was shoveling dirt onto the coffin, like he was burying the coffin, he kept getting this like weird feeling like somebody was watching him, and he like couldn't shake the feeling, and he could like see the house, like the freaking, I can't remember what the house is called, the house. And he could see the house from where he was, and he was like really scared. And then he kept feeling like there were still eyes on him though, so he thought that the boy's eyes were still open in the coffin. So he got like super paranoid as he was trying to bury this coffin, and then he just like lost it and like started to dig back up the coffin because he had to like open the coffin to make sure the boy's eyes were closed. And when he opened it, he said the boy's eyes were open, and then he just kind of ended with being like, Jesus. It was really creepy. It was a great scene. Now it's getting close to 6 o'clock at night, so I'm kind of fucking starving. So I think I'm gonna take a little break from this and make some food. It is the next morning, and last night I actually barely read anything of Salem's Lot. I only got to page like 227, which I only read like 10 more pages from where I last updated you. But it's because last night I was doing so many other exciting things, like helping my sister create her YouTube channel, and so I'll definitely have to link down below Rachel's channel. But I'm taking it to work with me today. I do work all day today, so if I do happen to get a break, then I really would like to read some of this while on break today. Oh my gosh, it's a little bit later in the night, as you can see. I got home from work a couple of hours ago and I've just been, you know, chilling and not reading. I ate tacos for lunch today and then I didn't even realize that I ate tacos again for dinner today. So that's how my day's going. I just got to part 2 of this book. This is finally where the book is really starting to pick up for me. Like, oh my gosh, the end of part 1, that shit was so creepy. It was almost kind of reminding me of The Troop in a way, which I was like, oh my god. There's this scene where this character, Matt or Mike, I don't really know which one, I keep getting them mixed up. He was saying, like, while he was digging up the boy out of the grave, you know, the one that had his eyes like open, the one that he was talking about, after that he was like really sick for a while and he was like, did you eat anything? And he was like, no, I keep throwing up. And he's like, and then his like legs feel like jelly and he like keeps thinking he's dreaming and he doesn't know if he's like hallucinating. And he said he like fell asleep for like more than 24 hours and shit, and he's just been acting like really weird, and it's been ever since he dug up the boy out of the grave. So I think something's like wrong with him, but like the way that he was acting, it just really reminded me of The Troop for some reason. Like when that man was like, I'm hungry, feed me. Like it just, I don't know, it gave me those kind of vibes. And something else I liked that they mentioned is when they said the last time that the house, which is this house, was occupied, 4 kids disappeared over a period of 10 years. Now that it's occupied again after a 36-year period, and Ralph Eagleick disappears right off the bat. So like, they're kind of suspicious that like any time that this house is occupied, like somebody lives there, all these kids start disappearing in town. So they think that there's like a connection there. And so I really like that. It kind of also like reminds me of It in a way, where like this thing comes and goes. Like it's been like 36 years since somebody's lived in this house, and like with It, it's like Pennywise comes back every 27 years, you know, like It comes back. So that's really interesting. It definitely reminds me of It a little bit in that way. But oh my god, the end of part 1, that was so freaking creepy. His breathing stopped, then he whistled out in a soundless scream. What in God's name had been invited into his house? I love this sentence when it says, night invaded his brain and made it a circus of terrifying images which danced in and out of the shadows. Clown white faces, huge eyes, sharp teeth, forms that slipped from the shadows with long white hands that reached for a shuddering groan escaped him and he put his hands over his face. I can't, I am afraid. It's just talking about how he's like so afraid in this moment. And then it says, in the awful heavy silence of the house, as he sat impotently on his bed with his face in his hands, he heard the high sweet evil laugh of a child and then the sucking sounds. That is so creepy. Oh my god. Why was there a child's laughter? Like, is the kid a vampire? Is the kid that got buried, but he's like, his eyes are open down there? Like, is he the vampire? And then maybe he bit the guy that dug him out of the, you know, underground, and then that's why that guy's acting so weird, is because he's like turning into a vampire? Is that what is happening? I do feel like it was kind of a spoiler to know that this book was about vampires, because if I had no idea that this book was about vampires previously, I would have been freaking shook at that scene even more than I already am. I don't know, I'm not necessarily saying though that that's affecting my enjoyment of it, because it's definitely not. Like, I'm still really enjoying this. So yeah, it's only like 10:45 at night right now, and even though I had a long work day today, I don't work tomorrow in the morning. I start work in the afternoon at 4, so I won't have an early morning tomorrow, so I might stay up a bit and try to read a lot more of this tonight. I'm on page 321, and I just wanted to update that something that I've noticed that Stephen King does that I really haven't seen a lot of other authors do is that he's able to write in a point of view that seems like it's the point of view of like the town. He'll have these chapters that are just called The Lot, and it's like really interesting because these chapters feel like they're written from the point of view of the town, which is something that's so unique. It just starts by saying the town knew about darkness. It knew about the darkness that comes on the land. Really interesting. Like, I've never seen any other authors write in this kind of way, where like you get the perspective kind of the town. Like, I don't know, it's just so interesting. And also I just got to the part where Matt's character just had a heart attack because he saw the freaking living vampire that is Mike, I guess, that he like came back. And it's like they said something about like once you've invited him in, like he'll always have permission to be in your home. So it's like once you've invited a vampire into your home, like they'll never leave. Okay, I'm on page 368. I'm kind of freaking scared right now. This book is making me want to sleep with the windows shut, because like I'm reading this scene right now and oh my god, it's like there's like a sound of like scratching at the windows, and then this guy just wakes up in bed and he looks at the window and the kid Danny is in the window like staring at him, and he's like, let me in, and he's like, I want to play with you. Like, I don't know why, something about like little kids just really fucking scares me like so bad. And it was really interesting because just a few scenes ago we got this really interesting scene where that kid Corey got like busted for like sleeping with that older woman, and like the husband found out about it, and the husband like nearly tried to kill him with a gun, but the gun wasn't loaded, but he like put it in his mouth to like scare him and pulled the trigger, and the kid fainted. And anyway, the kid Corey was like walking back home, and then he like saw this man thing out in the street, and the man was like, hey kid, like approaching him, and I think it was a vampire. And so that scene was very creepy as well. And then we also just recently had that scene where that guy Floyd that like was dating Susan, I guess, that he's like jealous of Ben, so he's the one that put Ben in the hospital. Like he beat the shit out of him, and then he's in the hospital and he died, and now his body is like missing from the morgue. And the baby, the infant that randomly suspiciously died, that body is also missing from the morgue. So like the entire town is turning into vampires or something, and it's just getting so good. I feel like I'm just flying through the pages now because it's just like really good. And even though I'm like so tired, like honestly, like any other night I would probably be like going to bed right now, but like this is so good right now. Like I can't even put it down, because if I tried to sleep right now I would just be thinking about how I need to read this book right now. Okay, I really love this quote right here when this kid is thinking about the peculiarity of adults. And this quote honestly reminds me so much of The Troop, because there was a very similar quote that was talking about this in The Troop, but it's talking about how like adults, like they took laxatives, liquor, or sleeping pills to drive away their terrors so that sleep would come, and their terrors were so tame and domestic: the job, the money, what the teacher will think if I can't get Jenny nicer clothes, does my wife still love me, who are my friends. They were pallid compared to the fears every child lies cheek and jowl with in his bed, in his dark bed, with no one to confess to in hope of perfect understanding but another child. There is no group therapy or psychiatry or community social services for the child who must cope with a thing under the bed or in the cellar every night. And I think this whole quote is just so similar to that quote from The Troop that was talking about how like adults don't know how to cope with fears, like things that they don't understand, like monsters and shit, whereas children do cope with it better, because like I feel like children have more crazy imaginations, and kids are always afraid of things like that, like the dark and like under their bed and stuff. And so like it's so interesting that this book mentions it too, because I think that's a really interesting topic, that like adults have fear, but they just fear different things, like the real life things, and they forget about the fears that they had as children. I don't know, that's just like a really interesting point. Hello. It is the next morning, and last night I stayed up so that I can make it to page 400, because I just wanted to get to page 400 so that way I could tell myself I only have 250 pages left. I'm really enjoying this. This was really scary to read last night. Like it was definitely giving me some like scary horror vibes, which is exactly what I signed up for. And now I want to sleep with my window closed, which is not a good time to read this during summer when I'm gonna need to have the windows open. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Anyways, this morning I need to film a new video for my YouTube channel real quick that I want to get up like today maybe. So I need to like get on it because I work at 4 in like a few hours. It has been some hours and I've only read about like 42 more pages of this book. I'm on page 442 now, and I did not have as much time to read as I thought I was going to this afternoon because filming and editing that video took more time than I was expecting it to, and now I have to go to work. But it's fine, I'm still enjoying it, and I want to read more of it tonight when I get home. Just got to part 3 and that puts me at about page 473, and I still don't really have any more thoughts to update you on, but I just wanted to update that I am back in bed reading. Quite a busy shift at work today, as you saw. I'm really happy with how those time lapses turned out because I wasn't sure they were gonna look that cool, but they actually looked pretty cool. I did enjoy the way that part 2 ended, when he said it was a terror he had never dreamed of, not even in the tortured days of his adolescence. The terror he felt was for his immortal soul. It's just like really dramatic, and I just kind of like love that. So yeah, I'm starting on part 3, which is like the last part of this book, and I have this much left. Hello, it is the next night. It is Saturday night, and I didn't really update you about anything this morning, but last night I did get to page 500 exactly, which is kind of where I wanted to be at. Yeah, I only have about 150 pages left, so I'm thinking about doing something crazy, and that is staying up late tonight and just finishing this book. I know, it's a crazy, wild Saturday night of reading Stephen King. It's just the best. I don't know, it's been a long time since I've just like stayed up late just to finish a book. I mean, I don't see this taking me too long to read the last 150 pages, but like it is already, it's 11:20 right now, so it's not too late, but I just have this like desire to want to stay up tonight and read this book because I have the day off tomorrow. I don't really have a whole lot going on, and the only plan I really had for tomorrow is to finish this book and then edit this vlog. It's a really rainy night tonight. I don't know if you can hear the rain in the background, but the rain has been dumping for the last like 2 hours, so I feel like it's just kind of like the perfect spooky reading weather, you know? Like I just love when it rains. I love reading horror books when it's raining. It is just such a vibe, and so maybe that is the universe telling me that I should just stay up late tonight and finish this book, because it's probably going to be scarier to read tonight than it will be tomorrow on a Sunday morning, you know what I mean? Look what I just got in the mail today. Carrie, which this is one of the books that I would eventually like to get to for one of these vlogs in the future, and I'm just so excited about it. I'm not a huge fan of this cover, but look at how small it is, especially next to Salem's Lot. Like it's like literally half the size. It's just crazy. But yeah, really excited to read this one eventually. I think Carrie is Stephen King's first published book ever, and then I think Salem's Lot is his second, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, I'm gonna read Carrie another time, but for now I'm gonna try to finish Salem's Lot tonight. We do love the sound of that rain. I'm going to try to light this freaking candle. It's giving me a lot of issues. Come on. I'm just trying to set the mood to read horror. Yes, it worked. Before I jump back into reading, I just kind of wanted to update you on what's happening in the book right now, because honestly, I kind of forgot what was happening myself until I just like reread these last couple of pages. Almost like the entire town, like a lot of the characters are turning into vampires now. Like it's spreading like wildfire, and unfortunately Ben's love interest, Sue or Susan or whatever her name is, has turned into a vampire. She's one of them now, and so now he's going to be forced to kill her, which is, you know, tragic. It's really interesting because they're all like, all the people that are not vampires, you know, like Ben, and I think his name is Matt, and then like the doctor dude, and I think somebody else, they're all going to the Catholic Church to like confess their sins or something right now, because they want to be like clean of their sins or something, and then they're gonna go and try to kill the vampire that's like at this house, like the Marston house or whatever. And so they said in order to kill him, they have to put the stake through his heart and then separate the head from his body and like cave the head in or something. I don't know, because like it has to be separated because like obviously most vampires are immortal, right? So like they have to kill him in a very specific way, and that's where it's kind of like leading up to right now. So I feel like we're about to reach a point in this book where there's going to be a lot of high action. So I just feel like I'm hoping that the action is written well and it's very like interesting to read about, because sometimes I feel like when there's like action in Stephen King books like this, I get like bored of it. Like for example in Doctor Sleep, when like Danny is like going up against the True Knot in that book, like I was really bored by the action. So I'm hoping in this book it's written better. Like 1:15 in the morning, and I just finished Salem's Lot, and it was really good. I'm gonna need some time to like think about all of my thoughts and like my overall rating and everything, and I will update you with my final thoughts in the morning because I'm so tired. Good morning. Last night I finished Salem's Lot. I think after some more thought about this book, I think I'm gonna end up giving it like a 3.5 out of 5 rating, which I know like for some reason people think when you give a book like lower than 4 stars it means that you didn't like it, but a 3.5 out of 5 is still like a really good rating from me. I really did enjoy this book, but I definitely also did have some issues with it. But first and foremost, I just wanted to say I love the vibe of this book. I love the atmosphere. I love that it's like a spooky, like it's simultaneously like a spooky, creepy haunted town story as well as like a vampire creepy story. But I will say that I like that this book kind of focused more on like the small town creepy vibes than it did on the vampire stuff, because I just don't think the vampire stuff was as interesting to me in this book as I wanted it to be. But with that being said, like I'm not much of a reader of vampires anyway, so like I don't think I'm necessarily the target audience for something like this, because I just don't find reading about vampires to be that interesting anyways. That's kind of what I said too after reading Doctor Sleep, when the True Knot was kind of like, they were all kind of like vampire type of characters, and I just like was not interested in them at all. But I do think that the villains of like Barlow and Straker, those two vampires in this book were definitely written a lot better like as villainous characters than Doctor Sleep. Like I just didn't like Doctor Sleep. But as far as the pacing of this book, I do feel like it was kind of like all over the place, because I feel like the first 100 pages of this book were really slow, and it was like building up the story of like everyone in the town and trying to introduce you to all these characters, and it was just like really boring to read the first 100 pages. But then somewhere near the 150 page mark or so, the story starts to really get interesting, and then by like the 300 page mark I was obsessed, and then around the like 500 page mark it started to slow down again and just became more about like them hunting the vampires and stuff. Like I don't know, I guess I liked more of like the mysterious aspect of this book. I liked like the mystery of this like haunted Marston house and trying to figure out like why all these people were disappearing and why like the bodies were disappearing from the morgue. Like I don't know, it was really good at building this like creepy suspense. But then I feel like once I knew what was going on and it just became about like hunting down the vampires that were responsible, it became less fun. I also feel like I never really connected with any of these characters, and I didn't really like any of the characters besides Ben Mears, who's like our main character, that's like the author dude. But honestly, some of these characters I kept getting them mixed up because their names are like very similar. I think there was like a Mark, a Matt, and a Mike in this book, and I was like, Who? I kept forgetting that Mark is like a child in this book. Like every time it was mentioning his character, I kept thinking that he was an adult for some reason, until it would like mention something like reminding me that he's a kid. Like he was the same age as the boy that went missing in the beginning of this book, and I just totally spaced on that. And then at the end of the book when he's like driving the car and it's like his feet can't reach the pedals and like he can't drive, and I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh yeah, it's because he's a kid. Like I just kept forgetting that Mark is a child for some reason. And I do feel like this book also has way too many unnecessary character point of views, but I understand the reason why Stephen King was trying to do that was because he was trying to portray like this whole town is fucked up and haunted, right? So like he wants you to see multiple different points of view of people in the town and like their everyday lives. And I guess like while I appreciated it, I just don't think it was all necessary, because I feel like this is the kind of book where you need to draw out a character map to keep track of like everyone, because there's so many characters in this book. Yeah, this scene definitely did have some like scary moments and things that are gonna like stick into my mind. It almost kind of reminded me of like the Haunted Mansion, with the way that like Ben had that memory from his childhood where he like walked into the Marston house and he saw the guy like hanging from the ceiling and stuff. Like those kind of scenes will definitely stick in my mind. Also the scene when Mark was like in his bed and the little boy was like scratching at his window and he's like, come play with me, like that was definitely one of the scariest scenes for me in this book, because I was like, what the fuck? And because I was like reading it late at night, so it was just kind of like creepy. But yeah, I don't know, I enjoyed this book. I really liked the way it ended too. I like how it kind of ends on that epilogue where you see all the like newspaper clippings of like bodies going missing again, like, oh, there was a car accident and they saw blood at the scene but the body is gone, and like there's just a bunch of like little like separate little like news articles at the end of like all these different cases of all these bodies just going missing in Salem's Lot. Like I don't know, it's just really interesting, and it was like a spooky way to end it. And I really like how the introduction of this book ties back to the ending, because the prologue and like the introduction of this book is almost everyone thought the man and the boy were father and son. How it brings this mystery right at the beginning of the book about like who is this boy and this man, and then at the end of the book it finally like ties it together for you that that's Ben and Mark at the end of this book. Like I don't know, it was just really interesting. And while I do feel like the action at the end of this book wasn't as like, I do feel like the ending of this book was mostly underwhelming for me, at least like the last 100 pages were just kind of like underwhelming, but at least the epilogue in this book is really solid. So like that was still something that I appreciated, because I feel like with Stephen King endings, I can only think of a few books off the top of my head that I really loved the ending, like 11/22/63 and Pet Sematary. But this one definitely had a really solid epilogue. Like the ending itself was kind of like underwhelming, but then the last little like epilogue was very satisfying. Pet Sematary is my number one. 11/22/63 is definitely my number two. And then this one's probably up there with like It and The Shining for me. Like this one just feels really like classic horror Stephen King to me, and I know that this was definitely one of his first books published, so that would explain why. But I really enjoyed this, and I really love reading more of Stephen King's like backlist titles, like his really old stuff, because I just feel like they have this like even more creepy atmosphere to them because they were written in like the 70s, you know? Like I don't know, I feel like it was just a different time then. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Salem's Lot. If you've read this book, I hope you read it if you're watching this, because it was so spoilery. But please let me know your thoughts on this book if you have read it. And yeah, I'm really excited to have finally read Salem's Lot. This one's been on my list for a very long time. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye.